The night smelled like cold metal and wet pavement, the kind of Christmas night where the city looks bright from a distance but feels merciless up close. Under a flickering streetlight, a man stood holding a thin coat closed around two small children, his breath fogging the air as if even his body was unsure it could keep going. His voice trembled when he looked up at the uniformed woman standing before him, not with anger or defiance, but with a question so fragile it sounded like it might shatter if spoken too loudly. Could she tell Santa they had lost their home? In that moment, Christmas magic felt very far away, and hope seemed like something meant for other people. Before this story pulls you deeper into that night, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that can happen when strangers choose compassion over indifference. The man's name was Daniel Reyes, and until a few months earlier, he had believed he was doing everything right. He worked long hours as a warehouse loader, waking before dawn, coming home after dark, his back aching but his heart steady because his children were safe. Since his wife passed away 2 winters ago from a sudden illness, Daniel had learned to live in survival mode, measuring life in grocery lists, school lunches, and bedtime routines. He had learned how to braid his daughter Sophia's hair in uneven but earnest patterns, and how to calm his son Mateo when nightmares came, sitting on the edge of the bed and humming softly until the shaking stopped. He did not dream anymore. Dreams felt like luxuries for people with savings accounts. The trouble began quietly, the way disasters often do. Overtime hours were cut at the warehouse. Then a supervisor hinted that layoffs were coming. Daniel told himself it would be okay, that Christmas was close and companies needed extra hands. But the layoffs came anyway, his name on a list taped crookedly to a bulletin board. The final paycheck barely covered rent, and the landlord, polite but firm, explained that patience had limits. Daniel sold what he could, an old television, his wedding ring that he had promised himself never to remove. He skipped meals so his children could eat, smiling while his stomach twisted into knots. He told Sophia and Mateo stories about Santa and warm houses and believed, foolishly, that belief itself might be enough. When the eviction notice arrived, Daniel felt something inside him go numb. He packed their belongings into trash bags because boxes cost money, and money had become a rumor. On Christmas Eve, he walked them out of the apartment they had called home, locking the door gently as if it might be unlocked again someday. He did not cry. He couldn't afford to. He spent the night in his car, parked behind a closed grocery store, waking every hour to check if the kids were still warm. By Christmas night, the car had run out of gas, and the temperature had dropped low enough that even breathing hurt. That was how they ended up on the sidewalk, under that flickering streetlight, when Officer Elena Brooks noticed them during her patrol. She had been on the force for 8 years and had seen more than her share of holiday misery. Christmas night usually meant domestic calls, drunk drivers, lonely people making bad decisions. She almost drove past, then noticed the children's shoes, too thin for the cold, and the way Daniel stood slightly hunched, as if trying to shield them from the wind. She pulled over, not expecting much, maybe a routine welfare check. She did not expect to feel her chest tighten when she looked into Daniel's exhausted eyes. Daniel did not beg. He did not ask for money or favors. He simply explained, haltingly, how things had fallen apart. He told her he did not know where else to go, and that the kids kept asking about Santa, about why they were outside on Christmas. The words spilled out slowly, heavy with shame, until that question surfaced, awkward and heartbreaking. He asked if she could tell Santa they had lost their home, because maybe Santa would understand better if it came from someone official. Officer Brooks had learned to keep her emotions in check, but that night something cracked. She thought of her own childhood, of Christmas mornings with hot cocoa and parents who never let her feel hunger or fear. She thought of how easily life could tilt in another direction. She did what procedure allowed first, calling in to check shelter availability. Everything was full. Weather emergencies had pushed the system to its limits. She could hear the disappointment settle over Daniel like fresh snow, silent and suffocating. But Elena was not ready to walk away. She brought them hot chocolate from a nearby gas station with her own money, wrapping the cups in napkins so the children's hands would not burn. She sat with them on the curb, ignoring the cold seeping through her uniform. She listened as Daniel talked about his kids, about Sophia's love for drawing and Matteo's obsession with toy cars. She saw the way he looked at them, fierce and apologetic at the same time. In her mind, this was no longer a call. It was a crossroads. Elena remembered a community center a few neighborhoods away, one that sometimes opened its doors in emergencies. It was unofficial, run by volunteers who bent rules because rules did not always account for real life. She drove them there, heater blasting, Sophia's head resting against the window as snow streaked past like falling stars. When they arrived, the lights were still on. A handful of volunteers were cleaning up from a small Christmas dinner they had hosted earlier. Elena explained the situation, her voice firm but hopeful. The volunteers exchanged looks, then nodded. There was space, they said. Not much, but enough. Daniel felt his knees weaken when he realized they would not be outside that night. The room they were given was simple, with folding cots and donated blankets, but to him it looked like a palace. Sophia laughed when she saw a small plastic Christmas tree in the corner, its lights uneven but bright. Matteo fell asleep almost immediately, clutching a stuffed bear someone pressed into his arms. Daniel sat awake long after, overwhelmed by relief and a new fear that this kindness might disappear as quickly as it came. Over the next few days, Elena checked in on them during her breaks. She brought information about job fairs, food assistance, and housing programs. She helped Daniel fill out forms that made his head spin. The community center connected him with a temporary job unloading trucks for holiday returns. Hard work but honest pay. It was not much, but it was a start. Daniel worked until his hands blistered, coming back each night to his children with tired smiles and stories about the future, careful not to promise too much. Weeks passed, and the city slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Christmas decorations came down, and the world seemed eager to move on. For Daniel, the days blurred together in a cycle of work, paperwork, and waiting. There were setbacks. One housing application was denied. A job opportunity fell through. Each disappointment felt heavier than the last, but he kept going, fueled by the memory of that night when a stranger had chosen to stop. Elena continued to advocate quietly, making calls, pushing forms to the top of piles, never taking credit. The turning point came unexpectedly, as these things often do. A small logistics company, impressed by Daniel's work ethic during the holiday rush, offered him a full-time position. The pay was modest, but steady. With proof of income, a transitional housing program approved his application. The apartment was small, older, and far from glamorous, but it had heat, a door that locked, and windows that let in the morning light. On move-in day, Sophia taped her drawings to the wall, and Matteo raced his toy cars along the baseboards, laughing in a way Daniel had not heard in months. Daniel never forgot that first night. He carried it with him, a reminder of how close he had come to losing everything, and how one act of compassion had shifted the course of their lives. He volunteered at the community center on weekends, unloading donations, telling other parents that it was okay to ask for help, that dignity did not disappear when you stumbled. He taught his children to say thank you, not just with words but with actions. Officer Elena Brooks returned to her routines, but she, too, was changed. Whenever she drove past that flickering streetlight, she remembered Daniel's question and the weight of it. It reminded her why she wore the badge, not for authority, but for moments when humanity mattered more than procedure. She never considered herself a hero. She simply did not look away. If this story is touching your heart as you listen, please take a moment to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists, and subscribe to the channel to support more stories like this. Years later, Daniel would tell his children that Santa did hear them that Christmas, just not in the way they expected. He would explain that sometimes Santa wears many faces, sometimes a uniform, sometimes a volunteer's apron, sometimes the tired smile of someone who chooses to help anyway. Sophia would nod, older now, understanding in her own way. Matteo would grin, still believing in magic, still racing his cars across safe floors. Just before the story ends, we have a special request for you. Please comment below with a single word or sentence about what kindness means to you. or share a moment when someone helped you during a hard time. Your words might be the hope someone else needs today. On that cold Christmas night, under a flickering streetlight, a poor single father asked a question that sounded like the end of the world. What he received instead was a beginning. And in a world that often rushes past suffering, that beginning became proof that even when a home is lost, humanity can still build something stronger in its place.